And here we are in Ways and Means, and it's Friday, May 22nd. And we're doing something. The optometrist bill, I don't remember what the bill number is anymore.
64.
Great. Floor is yours, Jen.
Great. Good afternoon, Jen Harvey from the Office of Legislative Counsel. We are looking at S64, an act relating to amending the scope of practice for optometrists. Do you want me to put the language up on the screen? How much detail, Madam Chair, would you like?
I'd like us to do fairly nominal detail until we get the part of
Because there's all kinds of hard to pronounce procedures.
I don't need
I don't have to.
any of that business. Thank you. And the thing with the eyes and the pins that's like in those ads, I don't want to talk about those.
Great, I wasn't gonna talk about that.
Thank you.
I think I'm qualified. Okay, so this starts out in section 1 by amending the definitions in the optometry chapter in Title 26. So we're in the kind of professional regulation realm here. And under current law, the practice of optometry has a certain list of practices that are included in the definition of the practice of optometry. This bill would slightly expand that as it relates to prescribing, so to add administering and to clarify therapeutic pharmaceutical agents, which is also defined. But the main difference here is that it starts introducing the idea of an optometrist holding an advanced therapeutic procedures specialty, which is what the most of the rest of the bill is about. And that includes performing certain additional advanced therapeutic procedures that it lists, various forms of surgery, laser procedures, and injections. And then it specifies that the practice of optometry does not include performing anything on the list of prohibited practices that is in section 1720 that gets added as well. Also add some other definitions, adverse event, basically anything that goes badly in a medical context, and therapeutic pharmaceutical agent. Then we get to section 2. This is license renewal. Under existing law, licenses are renewed every 2 years, and there's at least 40 hours of continuing education required for that 2-year period. This would add for someone with an advanced therapeutic procedures specialty. They would also need to complete an additional 5 hours of continuing education, approved by the board. In this case, we're talking the Board of Optometry in the advanced procedures. Section 3 adds the prohibited practices that an optometrist shall not perform under any circumstances, other than those that are set forth specifically in the list in the first section that we looked at. And it gives a list of procedures an optometrist is prohibited from performing. So many things on that, and there's 23 things on that list. Also, generally prohibited from prescribing or administering a drug or other substance that is a Schedule 1 or 2 controlled substance, with a limited exception for prescribing or administering hydrocodone in combination with analgesics for a short period. Section 4 is the advanced therapeutic procedures specialty. So this is really laying out what that looks like, has the qualifications. Somebody has to get an advanced therapeutic procedure specialty in order to perform the advanced therapeutic procedures defined in section 1, and it allows the board to grant that to somebody who is a licensed optometrist, meets specific education and demonstrated competency requirements that are listed in the bill, and they've completed the examination requirements also listed in the bill. Then it goes into education requirements that are a little different for somebody who graduated before 2019 and 2019 or after from optometric school. Because the training in the classroom has changed. So somebody who graduated earlier would have to do some additional 32 hours of additional postgraduate education, including certain topics in the didactic classroom instruction. And that's just for folks who graduated before 2019. Someone who graduated in 2019 or later does not have to do the additional coursework. But everyone has to do complete a preceptorship. And that is working with an optometrist with this similar expanded scope of practice, or ophthalmologist who is a medical doctor or osteopathic physician who works on eyes as well, specializes in eyes. They have to demonstrate clinical proficiency with hands-on experience performing certain procedures on live human patients, at least 2 of each of 6 different procedures.
And not an or. Okay.
Sorry?
Each, it's an and.
Yes,
not-
it's an and, yes. It's an and. And then a preceptor is either an optometrist with a similar scope of practice or an ophthalmologist. Must be direct and in person. Some other requirements around that. Examination requirements, there are a couple of additional exams that the applicant must successfully pass, both written and clinical, in injections and lasers and surgical procedures. Then it creates the potential for advanced therapeutic procedure specialty by endorsement for somebody who has the same or a similar scope of practice or broader in another state and has been in good standing there for at least 3 years. Reporting requirements requires an optometrist to report any adverse event, that was that defined term of bad things happening in a medical context, related to an advanced procedure within 30 days following the event. This is just a technical redesignation within the chapter. The act would take effect on July 1st, 2028, allowing OPR time to prepare. And that is the bill.
Maybe it's definition to whom or to which body do the optometrists have to report adverse events?
This is all within optometry, so this would all fall within the board.
And is there a database of the adverse events for the data that's available to the public?
I don't believe there's no requirement for that here. The concept of the adverse event, or at least the definition, I took from hospital safety and surveillance reporting system, which is all confidential to encourage reporting. Yes, to encourage actual reporting. There are any disciplinary action taken against a licensee, though, is publicly available on OPR's website.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe similar to Representative Burkhart's question about adverse effects, confidential, da, da, da. Is there an inventory somewhere that someone compiles about? I mean, there's people concerned about adverse effects from vaccinations, and I don't think there is any registry for that now, but there are adverse effects from time to time, and I wonder if when they're reported, if they're somehow recorded in the big master book of adverse effects or something like that.
Not that I'm aware of. These adverse events are, we'll look more, this is again, the definition from existing statute just reused here, but any untoward incident, therapeutic misadventure, iatrogenic injury, or other undesirable outcome directly associated with care or services provided by a healthcare provider or a healthcare facility.
And
I'm not aware of any sort of master bad event list.
I'm just curious for, here we are, guys. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm also not aware that there are similar, that there are requirements quite like this in other professions, although OPR or the Board of Medical Practice may have a different take or may have separate requirements in rule for reporting of adverse events.
Another question for Jen. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And we had a slight sidebar conversation before we went on camera, and I understand that we're expanding the scope of practice, and this has been under review and deliberation for years. And I understand this probably came out of OPR and that conversation. Has there been any conversation with the administration about the state plan? The issue is that Medicaid won't cover these procedures if provided by an optometrist, and that seems problematic, particularly if the goal is to expose or increase access. And is there a way we can shape that to ensure that if these procedures are truly provided by optometrists, they are also able to use Medicaid?
Yeah, so this came up originally in the House Healthcare Committee, and I had assumed if an optometrist was a participating provider in Medicaid and they provided a service, it would be covered. We heard testimony from the Agency of Human Services, the Medicaid division, that is not the case, that we would need to have a state plan. We would need to amend our Medicaid state plan, which is kind of the master list of all covered services for Medicaid. And so these services are currently covered, my understanding, when provided by an ophthalmologist, but not by an optometrist, and it would not be covered when provided by an optometrist unless we amended our Medicaid state plan, which means asking permission from the federal government, which we are also currently doing for doulas and Medicaid coverage for doulas and Medicaid coverage, I believe, for freestanding birth clinics, although I don't know that either of those has actually, there's considerations around when to ask for a Medicaid state plan amendment that the administration is working through. But it is my understanding, and I've testified to this in House Healthcare, which considered an amendment, and House Government Operations just yesterday, that the administration would require or would request, I believe, legislation directing them to seek a state plan amendment, that because there would be a financial implication associated with Medicaid coverage, so they would want to include it in a future budget request to the legislature to have the coverage, and they also need to do a fiscal analysis as part of their application to the federal government for the state plan amendment. So is there a process that you could start? Yes, and I have the language drafted, but my understanding it will not happen absent legislative request.
I'm just way over my skis here. This is not my area, but it seems to me that there would be an efficiency if we have to make a state plan request anyway because of doulas. Is there an efficiency in starting this so that they're doing it all? You know,
Yeah,
so
that's an
one
issue. I don't know how they, from a practical standpoint, I don't know if you bundle your asks or you do them one at a time. But this has been proposed and considered, and
It's been proposed to consider in two different committees, and
Two different
it's sort of
committees, and
outside of our.
seems to be a
time here.
the
concern.
timing, the information came after healthcare from what I'm hearing. I thought you said that your understanding changed post that.
No, that was during, I reached out to them during the process.
Okay.
I think there have been some concerns about the timing of the bill and the session that has affected interest in proceeding with the Medicaid aspect.
I don't know, and I don't know how to evaluate that. It just seems very problematic to me that we aren't considering accessibility for Vermonters who have more limited needs, especially given what we know about cuts in healthcare, just generally. I think it's hugely problematic.
You may want to talk to your colleagues on some of those.
I only found one place in the bill where it says fee. Right, so it doesn't say it's a new fee, it's the existing fee for a company.
You are going to be hearing from Ted in a moment. I don't want to, I stole Nolan's thunder last time I was up here, so I'm going to let Ted talk to you about the revenue implications.
Pretty. I think it's time for that.
Now?
then. Okay, thanks. Yes.
Do we understand, was
So it looks like a heavy.
it a procedural issue when that, and I know GovOps considered an amendment. Was it a concern about timing, process? Do you have any understanding of why that
We
amendment?
could make the hint when you ask them.
Okay.
Ted.
Yeah, Burnett, Joint Fiscal Office. Given the relative shortness of this fiscal note, I'm not even going to share my screen. Representative Kimball is correct. There is not really a very explicit reference to the fee that would be paid. But there is, by requiring optometrists to receive an advanced therapeutic procedures specialty, that kind of picks up the underlying OPR has kind of a general, they have specialties for a whole range of professions, and the fee for a specialty, unless designated otherwise in statute, is $100. OPR indicates that about 50 professionals would potentially get this specialty. And that would raise when the bill is effective in July 1, 28. So about $5,000. The specialty doesn't renew. So it's just a one time you get the specialty and that is covered. I mean, there's additional there are additional education requirements when their license renews as an optometrist, but as far as the specialty is concerned, that's a one-time designation. So, and there would be, periodically as new optometrists take up the specialty, you'd see $100 here and there.
Any other questions for Ted? Thanks, Ted. Ted and Teddy, when we're done with this vote, can you two go downstairs to GovOps? For the amendment, whatever the stove
Not gonna be
was.
forced.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You didn't sign up for this, yeah.
You actually did.
Oh, okay.
Anyone need anything else? Yes.
I feel like I need to know why we aren't asking why we're passing a procedure that we're not allowing certain people of more minimal financial means to access.
It's a very good question. I think that's been asked in both committees, and I honestly have not stayed clued into those conversations. So we can take a break after this next bill and then come back and vote on this after you get that answered for yourself. Does that sound good?
What I'm struggling is there seem to be very strong opinions that are completely contradictory, so I'm just very unclear how we're supposed to interpret that. So
And
that
do
would
you-
be to act at this point.
You could talk to our colleagues on healthcare and GovOps. I have not been following the conversation myself. Okay.
And I'm more confused now than I was before.
Is there something you could do if we took a break to find more clarity?
I can
Would you like us to do that? To take a break so you can try to get some clarity?
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Okay, we're gonna do one more bill before that. Anyone need anything else? Yes.
We passed this bill,
Was
but
it an if?
if we pass. this
Oh, okay,
bill
thank you. I missed that first word.
And we apply for a Medicaid state plan or put it into effect. Would an optometrist be able to practice even though they had all the requirements and yet we don't have the plan submitted?
I'm certainly not the person to ask that question
And
to.
Carrie, for example, yes, the Medicaid coverage would not affect whether the optometrist could perform the advanced therapeutic procedures if they received the advanced therapeutic procedure specialty. They just would not be able to be paid by Medicaid for providing them to a Medicaid benefit.
And this wouldn't take away from an ophthalmologist performing the duties until.
Right, and nothing about the bill changes ophthalmologist scope of practice or Medicaid coverage.
But just to be clear, can I ask a question? I think what I heard you also say is that the administration will not pursue a change in the state plan unless directed to by the legislature.
That is my understanding from them, but they have not, to my knowledge, testified since they testified in House Healthcare to say that they would need a state plan. That's an offline back and forth with them trying to understand more, and that was the my as much of the email that I can summarize the email. You can find it. They said. They said it would require them to, it would require an appropriation to have the coverage. Medicaid will not cover it without an appropriation. The legislation is needed to prompt them to request funding in the FY 29 budget. So yes, Medicaid will not cover without an appropriation. Our fiscal analysis and then a fiscal 29 budget request, both of which would be prompted by legislation directing them to obtain or to seek a state plan amendment. Is there a resource in which they would do it without being directed to? Yes. Will they? I don't know. But they will, they want to, so Medicaid will not cover.
So do you want to come back? Sure.
I'm so sorry.
This is good.
No, I think this is good. I have an idea, which is we make our approval contingent on the administration.
So other committees have taken a tremendous amount of time on this bill, and we have spent 7 minutes on it. And so I really don't want us to be the ones to offer an amendment.
This is news, though.
I don't think this is news to the people who have already spent an enormous amount of time on this bill. So I absolutely understand if folks want to take time to go talk to them, if they want to offer floor amendments, but like we have spent 7 minutes and we're probably not going to spend much more than 7 minutes on this, given how limited the jurisdiction about the revenue piece is. Jen, sorry, you were in the middle of a sentence.
That's okay. So again, Jen Carvey, Legislative Council. So my understanding that I confirmed with them is that Medicaid will not cover these services performed by optometrists without an appropriation. That would require a fiscal analysis and then a fiscal year 2029 budget request. And both of those would be prompted by legislation directing the administration to seek the Medicaid state plan amendment.
So this bill is going to go to appropriations next. It would be appropriate for appropriations to offer an amendment about this kind of thing, since they're the ones who do Medicaid payment things.
We wait for our straw poll.
I'd rather straw poll it and see what we're voting on then. I
We
mean,
can't, we have to, we actually have possession of the bill. It's not a straw poll. So we can move it to appropriations. Folks can vote no and reserve the right to vote yes if appropriations offers an amendment. That's fine. We can also take a break if folks want, and then come back and vote in a little bit. But we have full possession of the bill, so we need to take a vote, and then appropriations needs to go and take a vote.
to be clear, I just want to make sure I think what we're talking about here is a cure would be directing the administration to evaluate, do a fiscal analysis of what appropriation would need to be made to provide access to healthcare, because what we're talking about is proving healthcare that only some people can access.
Yes, and I believe that's been discussed in other committees, and that would be an appropriate amendment for appropriations to offer if appropriations wanted to offer that. Representative Higley.
So I would just like to say, and hopefully we can move this along, because I mean, I dealt with this years ago when we were on government. And so I just think we're at a point where we should move it along.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, but I just make sure I understand it. All the procedures that are in the bill are currently provided by ophthalmologists.
That is my understanding, yes.
Ophthalmologists do accept Medicaid for the payment of those services, but not necessarily all of them. Theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that is my general understanding.
So you're not,
So Medicaid is currently covering these, and they are being provided by ophthalmologists.
so by increasing the pool of people that can provide these services with the right training, you're not decreasing the availability of those services for those that are receiving Medicaid payments for them. You're actually increasing the amount of services available, but not decreasing the amount of Medicaid services available.
Right, you're not making any changes, so to Representative Page's question, you're not making any changes to the availability of ophthalmologist-provided services to Medicaid beneficiaries.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point.
I don't know if that's a good point, because I think if it affects recruitment, or if it takes pressure off of our region to maintain presence of an ophthalmologist, I don't know that it does. Like, I just don't know. We can make a decision today. The outside.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, so folks, we have two choices. We can take a vote on this now. And folks are free to vote yes or no. Or we could take, either way, the next thing we're doing is a straw poll on the manufactured housing bill. And then we can take a break and come back and vote on it in 45 minutes. Those are two choices. Are there people who want to take a break?
Yes, I think we need to take.
Okay, great.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Representative Susi, did you present this bill?
I am the reporter.
Oh, okay. Is there anything you want to share with us?
Yes, so it doesn't take effect until 2028. So I think that the delay on Medicare payments is gonna be minimal. Because once it gets legislated, then it will be approved by the state health plan. So I don't think that the Medicaid impact is minimal. And they can still go to an ophthalmologist if they want to, if they are on Medicaid in that 6 month gap.
Great, thank you. Do you folks still want to take a break before we vote on this? Rebecca, do you need to?
we've got conflicting information. One, we have letters.
So do you, or not, it's really fine either way, just let us know what you want.
It doesn't, I think it's a break, a quick break would be good.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Heard some things.
Fantastic.
For this.
Happy to do that. Okay,
It's different.
so we're gonna next go to the manufactured housing. Oh, look, here you are. Hi, please join us.
Yes.
And then we're gonna take a break and then we're gonna come back and vote on this.
I'm recording this too, so.
Oh, so you need to still go on.
Hetty, go downstairs, please.
Okay, I'll catch up with Cam because I
Yeah,
got
that's fine.
this bill.
Ted, can you go downstairs?
Yes, I'm gonna go downstairs.
Are you
My-
on this bill
I'm
too?
on this still, but it just kicks out the, whatever, this comes up by one.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Just say yes.
Cam,
Yes.
I have a feeling this is part of a beautiful friendship.
Oh my God.
Good afternoon. For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel.
Hi.
Take it away and we're gonna deep dive into manufactured housing again. Would it be helpful for me to just give a brief summary of the bill, the underlying bill that you all passed?
Yeah, but like so brief.
Yes, okay. So if you all recall, 757, section 1 made some very, as it passed the House, made some very minor technical changes to when you're transferring ownership of a mobile home. And then there was a few sections in the middle that made some changes to limited equity cooperatives. And you had a section that says that for a manufactured home community that is a limited equity cooperative, it shall be treated as if it were a nonprofit corporation for a public purpose in order to access state funding and grants. And then you all had added in a specific subdivision there to say that that shouldn't affect the tax treatment of those entities. Actually have the language here, so I'm going to pull it up and yeah. This language here on B1, the bottom of this page, mobile home park organized as a limited equity cooperative, treated for the purposes of state funding and grants as if it were incorporated as a state nonprofit with a public purpose and public benefit. It doesn't alter the specific funding and grant requirements. And then you added in the sub 2 in the top of this about that doesn't affect the tax treatment of those entities. And then towards the bottom, the very final provisions of the bill, if you remember, John Gray was in here and he talked about how you're making changes to when these homes are subject to sales tax. You were making changes to try to make that treatment as equivalent as you could, as if it were under the property transfer tax. So that if it's being sold and subject to property transfer tax, or if the mobile home is being sold and subject to sales tax, which is going to be dependent on how it's being financed, the tax treatment would be as near equal as possible. That's the bill as it came out of the House. What the Senate Economic Development Committee did was they took that language, the B1, treating them as if they're nonprofits, they put a sunset on it. So it's not striking it out, it's keeping it, it's putting a sunset on it in July of next year. They did that because they're requiring this report from the Department of Housing and Community Development in consultation with a lot of other agencies to report back, submit a written report on lines 11, identifying all state funding and grant loan programs available to mobile home parks for infrastructure improvement with an analysis on the eligibility and regulatory barriers prohibiting access for mobile home park registered as a limited equity cooperative. Senate Economic Development was a little concerned about putting this blanket statement saying treat it as if it's a nonprofit for all state funding and grants. Let's get a report back from DHCD identifying what those state funding and grant programs are. That way, if we need to go amend the eligibility requirements for those state funding and grant opportunities, you could do that directly. That's what the Senate Economic Development Committee report is. They changed the effective dates again to make that repeal effective July 1 of 2027. Then it went to Senate Finance, they voted it out, it went to the floor, and then the Senate did a floor amendment to extend the effective date of the changes to the sales and use tax exemptions out to January 1 of 2028. My understanding, and John Gray would better be able to answer the question because he drafted this, but my understanding was this does have a kind of minimal impact on revenues of the state. They're doing budget negotiations. We don't want to alter budget negotiations now. Let's just push it.
Yeah, and Ted said the fiscal impact was that all the fiscal impacts are a year later than fiscal impacts. That was his official report before he left the room that meeting. Consider that your JFO report.
So that's the amendment. Sunset the one section, get a report, extend out the effective date of the sales tax changes.
So Ken, was that the first part about study, instead of just treating the limited equity cooperative home parks as a nonprofit, it's all about the eligibility for different funding and grant sources? Is that the only thing it's about?
Yes, sir. That's the only thing they're sunsetting
It's
is.
not about organization income taxes or anything else, it's only about eligibility.
Yes, sir. Because, so there was a lot of discussion and there's been some, kind of confusion as this bill has worked its way through different committees. Nonprofit is just an organization type at the state level. You can organize as a nonprofit entity if you're structured this way. And organizing as a nonprofit at the state level doesn't have a direct impact on your tax exemption status at the federal level. And so there was a lot of discussion about, for some of these entities are registered as nonprofits with the Secretary of State, some are not. None of them really should be because they're all limited equity cooperative organizations. That's what they are. They're not nonprofit organizations. They're limited equity cooperative organizations. That's the organization type. But because some of them have been listed as nonprofits, apparently when they go to access certain state funds, if they have that piece of paper that says they're nonprofit, the funding entity, the granting entity kind of doesn't do any sort of further analysis there. Whereas some of the other ones that are registered where it doesn't say nonprofit, apparently there are barriers for those entities to be able to access certain funds. And so the Senate Economic Development Committee was saying, we're okay with this very broad statement, just treat them as if they are nonprofit, but the better solution may be to let's identify what those funding streams are. Let's identify what the barriers are to some of these corporations being able to access those funds, and then potentially address the issue, address the challenge directly.
Yes, it's more proven. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I remember in committee when we talked about the sunset of the nonprofit, but I don't remember why we agreed to that. Is it out of scope? Just briefly, can you recount why we agreed to that?
You all did not do the sunset. That is
Understood, but
the
we
Senate.
talked about it in here as part of the bill. And I don't recall why and I can even ask out of the room, it's not going to affect my vote in favor, but I'm just curious about that.
Why we did what?
Nonprofit, we sunsetted the nonprofit.
We didn't sunset, the Senate sunsetted it. That's what we're struggling.
Oh, sorry, let me rephrase.
Okay.
I remember a discussion about that, but I don't remember the why. I'm just trying to remember what we discussed, and it's not going to affect my vote, but I'm just trying to catch myself up with previous discussion.
Why we did the nonprofit thing.
Yeah, well, I understand the one nonprofit thing, so it enable this type to avail themselves of certain kind of financing things and various stuff. That all makes sense. I don't recall, and maybe it'd be nice to know why that provision is sunsetting, and I don't need to know that to go permanently on the bill. I'm just trying to catch myself up.
Yeah, as I was saying, the Senate is proposing to sunset it because their position in committee was again, as I was saying a second ago, these are not nonprofit entities. They serve a public purpose. If you
Gotcha.
look at that, if you look at the statutory section that governs limited equity cooperatives, and you look at the very top of that section, so this is the section for limited equity cooperatives. It says here that they fulfill the public purpose of providing and preserving housing for persons of low and moderate income. So you've given them a public purpose in statute. And we talked about how in statute, you limit what a limited equity cooperative can do with its assets if it ever dissolves. So if it dissolves, the assets of that LEC have to go to another limited equity cooperative, or they have to go to a nonprofit. So you're putting restrictions on them in similar ways that you put restrictions on nonprofit organizations, but they're not a nonprofit organization. And so the Secretary of State's office raised some concerns with this language in B1 because you're putting in statute of saying, treat them as if they're a nonprofit, and they're not. And so it's painting with a very broad brush. And if the issue is they are struggling to access certain state funding and grant opportunities, well, then figure out what those barriers are and then go amend the state funding and grant opportunities to make sure that a limited equity cooperative is eligible for those funds. That is probably the more appropriate way of resolving the problem, as opposed to just putting in this language in B1. And so that's what the Senate is proposing to do. Sunset that, get the report back.
Thank you. I got it. Close enough anyway.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Ed, since you're sitting here, do you want to say the thing that I summarized what you said before you left, but do you want to say it officially?
Sure, Ted Burnett, Joint Fiscal Office. The bill increased the sales tax exemption for manufactured homes from 40% of the transaction to 90%. And when I presented the bill to you all, that would have had a fiscal impact of $200,000 in fiscal year 27 and a $500,000 fiscal impact in 28. And by pushing up the fiscal or the effective dates a year, that means that those fiscal impacts have moved out.
Those fiscal impacts are what?
Moved out a year. Yes.
Anyone have any other questions? Yes.
So I don't see how this would be harmful to anybody. If they're moving the impact out a year, that's going to give people time to prepare. The economy will expand in that year or two. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And this will provide more housing.
I
Right.
feel very friendly towards their amendment. Does
Yeah.
anyone have any concerns? Okay, let us do a straw poll. All those in favor of the Senate amendment? All those opposed?
Yeah, voted the Senate amendment favorable 11-0-0.
Thank you. Okay, so our next step here is Teddy and Ted are gonna go back downstairs again. The rest of us are gonna go to the floor. And then after the floor, we're gonna come back here to vote on the optometrist and ophthalmologist. If the floor goes on for a long time, we will come back, we will leave the floor and to come back here and vote.
It's going back.
I think the floor's back on in like 3 minutes.
Okay, I can